Hey, hello everyone. How are you out there? Are you having a great Thursday? One of my favorite days of the week. Excuse me. Yeah, one of my favorite days of the week. Yeah. Hey, hello Carla. How are you? Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. Well, today we're going to talk about mystical places, um, ghost, UFOs, and legends about cities and places we probably know about. But thank you, Carla. I appreciate it very much. Yeah, yeah, we can talk about ghosts, but yeah, I want to get my book out. My book of tales of the unexpected. Where is it? Where is it? Right here? Oh, right here? Oh, here it is. Right here. Let's see. Let's see this. Which one we can do? Okay, let's see. Well, I'm gonna go to the index and see which one is a good one to read. Which one I find more interesting to read. On the index, okay. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Okay, let's see. Page 54. Okay. Oh, here we go. Let's see. Okay, this one's called Screaming Jenny. Screaming Jenny is from the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, something around that time. But okay, here it goes. The old storage sheds along the tracks were abandoned shortly after the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad was built, and it wasn't long before the poor folk of the area moved in. The sheds provided shelter, absorbed although the winter wind still pretty fierce every crevice and and rough fireplaces folks built within the poorly constructed sheds, too little to keep the cold at bay. My father has had lost his job that fall due to ill health that forced him to stay too many days away from work. Mama took a job washing dishes and cleaning rooms at one of the local inns, but the money didn't stretch far in a family of six. We were turned out of our lodgings, and when our money ran short, and I don't know how we we could have survived. We could have survived if one of my street friends didn't told me about the abandoned storage units. I was the eldest son, and I earned as much money as I could, hawking newspapers and running errands for some local merchants. Mama didn't like me leaving school so soon, but I was old enough to know my own mind, and we needed the money. Fortunately, between Mama and me, we made just enough to keep food on the table. So my little brother and two sisters were able to stay in school. I looked over the abandoned storage shed, found it creaky but adequate, and moved the family in. We put father and mother's bed next to the rusty wood stove. I purchased for a song at a debtor's auction where father had the best chance of recovering his health. We put the children in beds in the opposite corner and divided the room with a blanket hung from a rope during the night. My little brother and I share one bed, and my two sisters share another. It was long after we moved in that I met a gentle, kindly woman named Jenny. She was pushing 50 and had a sweet, weathered face and, and had a sweet, weathered face that was warm with care, and dark brown hair that stalked the streaked with silver. I took to her at once, which was unusual for me. As for I was solemn into res, retros, re, intro, introspective laugh. Jenny lived alone in one of the smaller sheds, having fallen on hard times. She had no family to protect her, and she was forced to do odd jobs to survive. She could no longer afford the rent to rent a room, so she moved into one of the storage sheds when it became available. Jenny Jenny never had enough to eat, and in the old winter months, her her tiny barely put out enough heat to keep her alive. Still, she kept her spirits and was first one at the door whenever one of the shit families had trouble. She had often came to play checkers and my invalid father while Mama was at work, and he came to look upon her as a second mother. My sisters and my little brother adored her. They brought they brought home little scraps from their schools to give her, and often did their homework in her shed. I learned from some of the young people in an impromptu village that Jenny always tried to help other folks when they took sick or needed food, sometimes going without herself so that another could eat. One cold evening in late autumn, Jenny Jenny is shivering her fire over her wire over her fire while my little brother perched in the corner doing his homework. When I looked on them, I saw Jenny drinking broth out of a wooden bowl. And then, to my horror, I realized that Jenny's dress was on fire. I, a spark had flown from the small stove, and it lit them, and it lit the hem of her skirt, intent on filling her aching stomach. Jenny did not notice her flaming clothes until the fire had burned through the heavy wool of her skirt. I gave a yell of alarm, and she started it, in surprise, nearly dropping her bowl. Jenny, you're on fire! I shouted, glancing around her, a bucket of water or a blanket. There was there was nothing available to douse the place. Mhm. Lifting up and carried Jenny threw her the broth over the licking flames, but the fluid the fluid did nothing to help. Drop on the ground and roll! I shouted, running to her and tried to push her on the floor. In her terror, Jenny did not heed me. Instead, she broke away and ran outside. She made for the train tracks, screaming for help. I started to follow her, but my little brother gave a shut up dismay, pointed at my trousers, realized that I had a, that I had caught fire when I tried to help Jenny. I flung myself on the floor of the ship, rolling around to put up the fire, while my brother cried hysteri- hysterically, hysterically, and and fumbling with the shirt trail. As soon as we smothered the fire in, in my trousers, I slipped up to follow Jenny, telling my brother to run home and get help. In the distance, I could see her still running along the tracks, flames engulfing her body. I raced after her, shouting desperately for her to drop on the ground and roll. And just as I had done, I have done, Jenny was making for Harper's Ferry train station, which was only a short distance from the ship village. She probably thought they had they had they they had enough water to douse the flames, but the station was still too far away, and the wind she was kicking up by running had turned the liquid flames into a glowing inferno that engulfed her from head to toe. From head to toe, as I jumped desperately around the tracks, Jenny's screams grew more horrible. The pain was blinding for everything else, and her steps were slowing down. I thought I might be able to reach her, but just then I heard train whistling. I whirled, I whirled to gaze up the tracks and then shouted desperately and ran toward Jenny. She had staggered blindly into the rails just west of the station, a ball of fire that barely looked human. In her agony, she had not seen the glowing headland of the train rounding the curve of her speech of the brakes as the engineer sputtered for fire. The fire even bigger. They tried to stop. It was still 20 yards away when her horrible scream broke out as the train moved her down. Altered by the whistle, the crew from the station came running as the engineer halted the train and ran back down the tracks toward the Jenny, whose body was still burning. React her at the same time as the engineer, who shouted to station master to bring water. Both of us knew it was already too late. Jenny was dead. Mhm. Hey, hello, real world. Thanks for coming. The men dozed the fire and carried her body back to the train station, while I glimpsed home to comfort my little brother and tell my parents the terrible news. Jenny was given a popular funeral, which was attended by everyone in the ship village. She had no money for a tombstone and was buried in an unmarked grave in the local churchyard. Within a few days, another poverty-stricken family had moved into the shack, and Jenny was forgotten by almost everyone. Everyone except for me and my family, who had loved her like a grandmother. like a grandmother. I had nightmares every night for 6 months, beloved friend, seeing my beloved friend burning over and over. I kept reliving the scene, trying to figure out what might have done differently to save Jenny. My parents pressured me again and again. I had done everything possible. Jenny had died because she panicked, plain and simple. It took a long time for me to believe what my folks had said, but when I finally did, she the nightmare ceased. A year to the day after Jenny's death, I was coming home late from one of my odd jobs when I heard the sound of a train approaching the bend near the ship. I glanced toward the tracks and stopped dead, staring as glowing ball appeared in the distance. It hurled itself forward the bend, gradually assuming the shape of a burning woman running to the train station. It was Jenny. I could hear her to scream as the train whipped around the corner. Too late to stop the engineer flew over the ghostly glowing figure before he could bring the train to a screeching halt. I watched in horror as the glowing figure lay broken and burning for a moment on the tracks. Then it disappeared. Looking for the engine, the passenger, the engineer, the engineer ran back down the tracks to, to search for mangled, burning body, but there was no one left there. I wanted to tell them that had tell them, leaping from the air from the engine, the engineer ran ran back down the tracks to search for a mangled, burning body. But there was no one there. I wanted to tell him that I had a very ugly a baby shower here, bridal shower. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah. I could hear her screaming as the train whipped around the corner. Too late to stop. The engineer flew over the glowing figure before he could come bring the train to a screeching halt. I watched in horror as the glowing figure lay broken and burning for a woman on the tracks. Then it disappeared. Yeah. Leaping from the engineer went back down the tracks for search and mangled burning body, but there was no one there. Hey, heaven sent, how are you? Oh, I'm doing fine, heaven sent. And yourself? wanted to tell him that he had run over a ghost, but I was afraid he would think I was crazy. I heard later that the shaken engineer brought his train into the station and reported the incident to the station master. After hearing his tale, the station master remembered poor dead Jenny, realized that her ghost had returned to haunt the tracks where she had died. Well, yeah. I went home on legs that would barely hold me up and told Mama the whole story. Whole story. mm, Whole story. She listened with a white face and with a white face and creamy pursed lips. Mm, Really can. Moves on. Oh, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. So I went on legs. She would she would barely hold me up and told Mama the whole story. She listened with a white face and really to sugar lips. They that might be that okay that I heard the talking softly with father. The next day my parents told us that we were moving into the lodgings in town. Mama had served enough to put down a deepest a down the passes on a place. My father was old enough to work part time in the mercantile. We packed our of our things and uh, well, that was some scary story. The girl didn't want to listen. She got so paranoid, and she ran away. And she ran away. She was on fire, and the train had struck her, and she was there to haunt the tracks in that area of town. That was back east somewhere that happened. I think. Well, that's Yeah, I'm trying to put a new link because that link I wrote it wrong. So don't click on that link if you want to. We'll put a link right now. I'm just gonna fix some stuff here. Hey, hello, Denise. How are you? Oh man, I bet it's wet over there where you are reading. Oh man, we sure need some rain here. Yeah, I'm gonna restream it again, okay? Because it's not working.